Hey everybody, this is Jon Croft with Cultural Warfare with Jon Croft, and I am Jon Croft. How's everybody doing tonight? And we have
Hi.
Rebecca here. How are you, Rebecca?
I'm good. How are you, John?
Good. Did you enjoy our topics over at Meeting Moses Weekly?
I did. I really liked This Book Might Explode. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that was a pretty fun. I like Ethan Nicole. I'm glad he's doing something with himself and
Yeah.
not getting down because just because Daily Wire, is changing things around.
And he was on the Babylon Bee as well, right?
Yes, he was. He did a great deal. He was on the podcast. He was hosting the podcast with what was his name? Something Man? Kevin Mann? No, I don't remember his name.
Yeah.
Funny. They're both funny guys.
Yeah. And that was really cool about The Chosen and being filmed in Italy.
Yeah, this summer.
That's really wild.
That's exciting. It is. And we talked about Kinsuke's Kingdom.
Mhm.
That's great. But tonight we'll be talking about do conservatives know what time it is? What time is it at? What time is it at? Okay, yeah, I was going to share something. I need to queue it up, but I had I guess you could call it a little run-in with my friends on X. They are, I don't think Nick seriously would call me a friend, but maybe Matthew Marsden, who knows? But these are fellow conservatives. They are in the film industry, of course, much more professionally than I am. I can share with you their X what I'm here to do with Nick, and he doesn't probably know about this or care. And I have had a run-in with Matthew Marsden before in a way that wasn't altogether cordial, but that's okay. There's a lot of different varied ideas on how conservatives and Christians ought to be engaging in culture. I like to correct some people, especially the people who I think can make a difference. And if you've seen some of these guys, they really could make a difference in the community. Because I'm going to share Matthew Marsden's article because this set it off. This set off the discussion. And again, I want to stay laser focused here. This is about do conservatives know what time it is, right? Matthew Marsden says when this article came out, there were a spate of them. The amazing Tucker Carlson reached out to me to be on his show. He knew what was going on. Throughout my objections, I received several DMs from people in my industry praising what I was doing. He goes on about the difference between conservative Christian companies and liberals in Hollywood. And this is kind of when I caught on to Matthew Marsden because not only did I see the article of him standing up against the vax, right? But then I saw him on X also making a stink about it. And he mentioned, of course, that we conservatives do not treat their people the same as they do in Hollywood. Because why do these guys know this? Because they come from Hollywood. They know how Hollywood treats their people. And here's the article. He leaves a picture here of the article. I believe this is on Hollywood. Oh no, it's on Mediaite, which I don't really go there. Um, Matthew Marsden loses job over his stance, says conservatives get canceled by Hollywood for speaking out. Yes. So his point is well taken. Nick responds and says, it literally just happened to me last week. Now, please don't be too harsh, Nick Searcy, guys. Nick Searcy, if you've seen Nick Searcy on Twitter, you know that he can be brash, a brash individual who's very honest and authentic. And that means he might call you names. So don't get offended. Nick Searcy has this experience. It says, it literally just happened to me last week. a supposedly Christian producer made an offer to me for a ridiculously low amount of money and a rather insulting credit placement. So this is not a great start here on this tweet because he's giving you the impression that this guy is kind of a scumbag. Um, so then he says, my rep countered with what I should get for a comparable role. Should get for a comparable role. The producer just said, forget it then, without even countering. He's expecting a counter. I agree. It's nice to have a counter. It was like my counter offer offended him, he says. In the same movie, they will pay some leftist actor whatever they want. Okay. I don't think that's true. But they'll probably give them more than what they're giving you. That's true. So I get the point. People on the conservative side don't respect their own. And in fact, they treat us worse because they think we are desperate and or down with the cause. I can understand. And this is why the right will never compete with the left in entertainment unless huge changes in attitude occur. They say they want to build an alternative to Hollywood, and then they treat their potential allies like. So he feels he got treated like boop because they didn't give him a good offer. So I kind of take issue with this attitude, right? I take issue with this attitude. You know why? We don't work in Hollywood. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but conservatives have been pushed out of Hollywood. So we have a different marketplace. And that's kind of like saying, oh, I can buy a house in California for this price, but I can't buy the same house in this other state for the same price, right? Because you're in a different market, right? So the price of living is different. Why is that? Because jobs pay more. Maybe there's less taxes or more taxes in one place than another. Living standards are different. This is how markets are. Some markets, like you could go to Thailand and get twice as much fruit and vegetables for the same price as you can in the US. Is that unfair? Are we, is that, does that offend us? No, if you want to live in California, that's fine, but you're going to have to pay more, right, to live there. So sure, you get paid more from your producer. He's saying his producer is supposed to pay him more money. Um, sure, you might get paid more, but now you got more expenses in California, right? So that's how this works. If you don't want as many expenses, you got to move and you got to work with possibly different people. There's an adjustment that takes place here. So I think a lot of people who have worked in Hollywood, right? They're used to being treated a certain way and they don't understand. And I'm not whatsoever insulting Nick by saying this, not whatsoever. It's a bit of a wake up call for a lot of us. I had a wake up call 5 years ago and realized none of my pitching, none of my work, none of my script writing, none of that stuff mattered at all to people in Hollywood. Why? Because I thought it was about money and it wasn't. It was about ideology, right? So now I've woken up to this reality and it took me 5 years to get here to where I'm finally working on new projects that are readjusted for the market, right? How do we readjust for the market? There's different ways to readjust for the market. First of all, don't expect the same thing. You got to break yourself of this idea to expect, what Nick is calling a low amount of money according to whose standards, right? So as people know who research this kind of thing, Hollywood actors are paid too much money. I'm not saying all of them, don't misunderstand. I know that the high priced ones are being paid too much. The rest of them might not be paid enough, right? But I'm saying what people understand. People already understand that California taxes people too much. We all know this. Hollywood there's this whole bloated infrastructure that goes with Hollywood filmmaking, including the unions, etc. This is not unknown or unheard of. We know how this works, right? So when you go to a non-union picture, or you go to a conservative picture, or you go to a faith-based picture, don't expect to be treated the same way. So that's just going to happen. We have to understand, this is why I call this episode, Do Conservatives Know What Time It Is At? I understand he's trying to defend his career here and his cause, and he wants standards to be upheld. He wants standards to be upheld, right? Like Justine Bateman, for example. Justine Bateman is a great artist. She directs her own work. She's starting her own movement called Credo 23, which is a non-AI filmmaking movement. And yet, I take issue with one thing she's doing. She's taking with her the Hollywood bloat of what? The unions, the bloated infrastructure with her movement. They literally said in order to be a Credo 23 film, you have to accept the bloat. This is not the attitude we need if we want transformation to occur. If you want transformation to occur, and Marcus Pittman from Lore TV weighed in on this and supported me. I'm going to interpret this as he's supporting me on this, but maybe he's not. I don't know. I'm not going to speak for Marcus, and that's fine. Let me say how I responded to him, to his complaints. I said, I've seen poor homeless people turn down jobs. I'm not saying he's poor and homeless. Don't misunderstand. I'm saying even the worst terrible situation, not a great situation in LA or whatever, not an actor, but I'm bringing it to the extreme, right? I'm saying that anybody can turn down a job, right, if they get offended at things. And yet what? I say they get offended at things too, but we still try to help. We still try to help people who are poor and homeless, even if they don't like it. If they don't like what we're offering them, we're still going to try to offer something, right? Now we'll talk more about what he's talking about offering, and because there is a rebuttal he makes, he's a little offended. That's fine. I say, let me finish up what I say here. I say, understand that you both might end up in the same boat, poor and jobless, unless you huddle together and play nice. He gets offended. He says, I didn't turn down the job. So he sees this as it's not his fault, right? That he didn't like the first offer. Okay, I say it's pretty easy to see that you did not take the offer and now you're complaining about him. Sure, maybe he's got a lot to be desired as a negotiator, this producer he's talking about, right? He gave up. This is not smart. But some great producers are not good at negotiating. He could still be a great producer, right? So don't burn bridges. And that's what I say here. I'd say refrain from burning these bridges. Try to work with people anyway. Do it for the right reasons. Maybe do it for the script, not because they got the cash. You see my main point here is that the motivation that I'm seeing from Nick is, hey, the money. Like, this is not a standard of money. And I've been trying to tell Matthew Marsden this, and I told him to work with Angel Studios. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. They don't know what they're doing. Like, that's his response to me, right? So um, these guys are used to working in these Hollywood situations. They're not used to the new forces coming in from the outside, coming into Hollywood, right? So that's what we have to do. We have to come out of Hollywood. This is my whole theme, guys. Media Moses. Come out of Hollywood. Take an exodus out of Hollywood. Leave it, right? And yeah, you're going to have to take a pay cut. But it's not about taking a pay cut, right? It's about thinking differently. It's about understanding that you can make deals from the ground up. You can get points on the back end. You can become a producer of this production. You can partner with people who don't know everything about filmmaking because guess what? If they're a conservative or Christian and they're just coming into filmmaking now because they're seeing the need, okay? I started seeing the need. I was working in Hollywood, working on just regular films, not even Christian films. I did not want to work on faith-based films. They're not that good to me. I don't want, the standards are too low on the quality. The structure of the script of the funding, the structure of everything, the purpose, the marketing, all different. I don't want to do that. So I mean you're going by a shoestring and you have a very strict genre, right? I don't like that strict genre. It's not a very good genre. So it's the motivation, right? It's maybe do it for the script. And that's what I'm talking about with attitude, right? Change your attitude. Hollywood 10 years ago was not dumb about this stuff. They actually did care about the art. Quite a few people cared about the art and not the ideology, right? And Nick is the prevailing ideology for the last 20 years. Well, I should say 30 years, but not the last 10 years. So from the 90s to the early Zeds, the prevailing ideology in Hollywood was about making money, was not about the art anymore. That ended after the 80s. Okay. It was no longer about the art and the craft, right? It was about making money. So genre filmmaking, right? And now in the last 10 years, what's it about? And this is what people like Matthew Marsden, who's figuring this out. Thank God he's figuring this out, right? He's a great guy. He knows what he's talking about. You know, good Christian brother. He's figuring this out. It's about ideology. Hollywood cares about ideology. They don't care about money anymore. They will give up all that money as long as you practice their ideology, right? And Nick is stuck in before this happened. When he comes from, it's all about the money. And that's what tells you what the standards are for good filmmaking. Am I getting, is this a union picture? Are we getting enough money to come in here and pay all the people, right? So we don't have issues, you know? And, you know, part of me was always like I knew this, I came up in this, but I also studied Werner Herzog. And Werner Herzog was always this guy who was like, learn how to pick locks and do stuff and ask for permission later. Just go do stuff. Don't get permits. Obviously you don't want anyone to be in danger, but how can Herzog get away with this? Well, obviously, often he's shooting by himself with a camera. He's just get the shot, move on, right? That's the mentality. It's a different mentality than a lot of guys in Hollywood work. Of course, Herzog became an actor in his own right, no longer shooting as many films, right? More like working in big power deals. And because he became a celebrity in its own right. But that was kind of one of the people who I was brought up learning from is Herzog. So I always had this kind of edge that I understood that filmmaking was really about getting the shot and less about meeting people's standards or asking for forgiveness or whatever, right? It's about doing the thing in your own way. So again, I return to this ethos. What I tried to do is also inspire faith-based filmmakers to think differently, think outside of the genre that we have now. He tells me later here that, by the way, that it's a $7 million picture. There's a few things we say here that aren't important, really. I'll just say this quickly. Oh, okay. You seem pretty upset he didn't make a counter offer. I think that was his big mistake. Always make a counter offer, which is what I learned in negotiating. In 35 years, I've never experienced not making a counter offer, he says, even if it's just to say this is all we can do. Totally true. Absolutely true. And I say, yes, I agree. I produced for 15 years until this date, 2020. And that was a top rule. Admittedly, I was always too nice to actors during negotiations, but I at least knew that. So I at least knew the rule. But I'm not a great negotiator either. I'm more what you would call a creative producer, which I explained to this gentleman here. Not all producers are good negotiators. At AFM, which is where I went, they teach that in the minimum, there are three kinds of producers: the money or asset acquisition producers, which are usually the people who get the talent and the people who would have been talking to Nick, right? The money or asset acquisition producers, the creative producers, which is more what I was, and the onset protocol producers. These are producers who understand onset protocol. They are the ones who have all the permits. They're the ones who have the purse. They're the ones who say no to a bunch of stuff. They're really good at saying no. So, and you don't want to face them down. So these are good onset protocol producers. Where the money asset people are the yes men, the onset protocol producers are the no men. They're the bad cop, good cop, bad cop. And I'm the creative producer. I'm the person who knows everything about the script. I'm the producer who knows what all the sets are and what all the setups are and what we need to do for that day. I'm like a backup for the AD, right? If the AD doesn't know what's going on, I know what's going on. And the reason is because I care about the story, right? I want to make sure that everything's done for that day. And I'm often the one with the AD who moves scenes around and calls for a new actor to come in, and on things can get planned or pre-planned or moved around. And me and the onset producer could work on that stuff quite a lot. So at that point, you don't even need a money or asset producer. Those are people in pre-production, sometimes in post-production, and they make sure you have all the assets you need to shoot that picture. They're incredibly, without those people, you cannot even get to, principal photography. You can't even get there. So these are the people that most people know as a producer because often they're meeting them if they are above the line or if they are in casting, right? So, and these people are often meeting with the director, you know, as it comes to the high level decisions have to be made. So I respect these people a lot, but I was not a great negotiator myself. And I learned some about it and watched some of it happen. Uh, I tried to negotiate with Michael Rooker. Um, and my issue was I did not want to lie about whether we had the money to do what he's asking. And so that was just not something I enjoyed doing. But there's more to this. It wasn't just Matthew Marsden and Nick Searcy's response. Here's Nick Searcy's profile. You know him. You know this guy. He's got a well-known face. He's a face. He's got a well-known face in film. Love the guy, respect the guy. If you read his Twitter though, he goes off on people. He's not always kind on there, and that's fine. You got to know, you got to understand that those people, um, it doesn't mean they have a bad heart, right? They're fiery. They're working towards goals. That's how they get goals done. Like instead of just responding to people, right? Which I don't always enjoy doing because often what I say can sound like I'm insulting people, and I don't mean to. I made a tweet and I retweeted. He said about what he said about this Christian producer and that he was disappointed, right, about this. Here's what I said: I really feel for Nick, but this is not how a new growing industry works. Nick needs to understand what time it is. It's time for great conservative artists to make good, talented work for small money. We do it because we're true artists and the story is good, meaningful, culturally impactful, not because we're pros who deserve our pay. No, Time to make real art, not make profit. So I know some people will balk at that. I think this guy balks at it. Um, Conservatives are supposed to work for almost free because they're in the unpopular minority. Well, when you're unpopular, you're not going to get people buying your stuff, are you? That's how markets work. If your stuff's not popular, you're not going to make much money, are you? So then all this gets turned around, and I believe it will. Those of your ilk will be in our rear view. I won't feel sorry for you. I'm not sure what he's saying. Time to make real art. So I guess making real art doesn't matter to a lot of people, which is my point, right? Frankly, we conservatives have to know what time it is. For example, I think Lore TV guys are right about some of this because Marcus weighed in on one of these and said, we have a different model and more money can go to you. And this is what I've noticed. I don't just recommend Lore TV to people, to these fellow conservative filmmakers who, again, aren't bothering me or offending me. I'm here to just help out. And if what I'm saying has nothing to do with your particular project, that's fine. I'll be happy to take the L. We don't have to get insulting, right? And if someone's trying to help you out, like, I don't think that should be seen as a bad thing. Um, and yes, I'm going to say it. A hilarious thing is that you think I don't know what time it is. No, I don't think you do. And he doesn't care what I think. So, guys, you got to look past this stuff. Just because these guys are arguing with me means they don't know what time it is. They're proving my point. And I hate saying, "Oh, my point is this, my point is that." Okay, that's not ever what I wanted to do here. As a producer, the point is to maximize the profitability. Sure, Nick and that kind of producer would get along very well. I understand that kind of producing, but what did I say? I'm a creative producer. And that means I care about more than just if that film makes money. I do care about that. I do care about that. But what I care about is a real film movement that affects the culture. Calling yourself a conservative and making pictures that used to get made in Hollywood 10 years ago and calling that conservative because it's not crazy, crazy Hollywood as it is today. I'm sorry, that's just not good enough. Why? Because the way culture works, you're just going to gravitate into the same place, the same ideology that has led us to where we are now is just going to lead you to the same place. Because politics does not solve this, culture solves this. So you have to be a culture builder, right? And to build new things is hard. And that means you're going to get less money. And that means maybe don't get offended when the producer you're working with is maybe not the best at everything, or you're not used to working with a producer that doesn't work with unions, or you're not used to working with a producer that doesn't give out points like candy, or you're not used to a producer who doesn't use the envelope system, or you're not used to a producer who, whatever they do that you don't like, is it's time for you to look past this and time to make work for the right reasons. That's what time it is at. It's not for your benefit anymore. It's not to pay your bills anymore. It's not to meet any Hollywood standard anymore. That's not what time it is. Look into The resistance movements from Eastern Europe when they were fighting against communism. Look into a parallel economy. Look into what these guys had to go through. Solzhenitsyn and these people had to go through. Ever been behind the Iron Curtain? That's what time it is right now. It's Iron Curtain time. So don't expect to get paid the same amount that all the comrades out there get paid. All the cult members out there are going to get pats on the back. Congratulations for all your great work for the Communist Party or for whatever other cult you want to call it. It's some people say it's like a Gnostic cult. Some people say it's like, they bandy about terms like wokeism, and let's look past the political ideology of it. It is a cultural problem. It is a social problem. Now we have tribalism. We've reverted from good nations and democracy to tribalism. Your tribe is not going to get a pat in the back. And you know what? What do you care? Anyway, what you have to understand is that your new tribe is different. And your new tribe is very small. And your new tribe needs support. And your new tribe don't got all that money and cash laying around. Sorry, and people are not going to just support you. But guess what? Cream rises to the top. And this is a small drink. So you got a little bit of cream up there. Well, you got to find that cream. And that cream is a director, a producer out of 100 who knows what time it is and who makes the right kind of picture that breaks through to the other side. And those are the kind of people that you want to know as an actor. I'm like, you know what? I've known lots of producers who are terrible at negotiating like that, but they're good at other stuff, man. I admire those people. There's few and far between us conservative producers and directors. I hear people on the periphery of these conversations, and what they say is, "Oh, look at you, crazy conservatives! You're so dumb. You're fighting with each other. You don't even know how filmmaking works and art works." They like this stuff. They want us to all divide and not work together, not have gratitude, not compliment each other, not work together despite the lack of cash, right? That's what we should be doing, working together despite the lack of cash. Who cares? I don't care. I want to make stories. That's what I care about. And when Hollywood can't even make a story without shoving their ideology down your throat, ugh, like, can I just make a story without someone doing that? That'd be great. Thanks. Okay, let's do that. That'd be great. So that's what time it is at. That's what time it is. It's time to live in a parallel economy in which you tighten your belt and you focus on what really matters. And that is art, good art, not going for the paycheck. And then if people don't work and perform as good as professional Hollywood, what we're used to, it's okay, man. Like, it's not the most important thing in the world. What's important is that we look past all these delicate matters that our stomach wants, and we look at the spiritual things that matter, right? The art that matters, that speaks truth to culture. That's the stuff that matters. And yes, I know what I'm talking about. I've been in film production for 15 years. I worked at AFM. I tried to pitch films. I shot films locally where I'm at in Florida. You can see my IMDb, but that doesn't matter. What matters is the content of what I'm telling you. And nothing that I've told you is false about this industry. We need to work together. that's as true as can be right now. And if that's all you get from this, fine. I agree with Matthew Marsden's the spirit of what Matthew Marsden started out to say is that we need to support each other. That's all I'm saying, man. We need to support each other and not just say, oh, I didn't like what this guy I'm supposed to be working with did. I'm going to blast it out on Twitter. That's not what time it is. It's time just to be grateful to work with each one of you guys and make great pictures. That's what time it is. And probably not going to make much money. That's okay because we're about the art. All right. Sorry about that, but that's how the culture crumbles. All right, guys. So, where can people find you, Rebecca?
You can find me on Substack at Rebecca Croft and also on YouTube at Rebecca Loves Jesus. Where can people find you?
That's right. I love Jesus too.
Hey.
You can find me at Substack as well. I got trithiafilm.substack.com. That's my new film company, which I had to build. Um, Working on a documentary. You can also find me on my articles on MediaMoses.com. I even talk about Nick Searcy there once or twice and Matthew Marsden. I do have paid and unpaid subscriptions available now. So appreciate you guys for that. And you can also find me on YouTube and X at themediamoses.com and at Jon Croft. And love you guys and have a great weekend.